we're back with part 2 of the Angela R. Watts interview. Angela is a best selling author, a young, talent filled gal who has so much grit, works very hard, and I'm excited to talk shop with her. This episode was filmed back in February, so the books that she mentions are published and out, at least almost all of them. And she has surpassed the 20 book mark and has published 23 or almost 23. She has a Kickstarter going on right now for her latest novel, A Solstice of Fire and Light. So you can help her on her journey, be a part of her self publishing by checking out her Kickstarter link below. Enjoy. So, the funny thing is that when I went to Railmakers Online in 2020, I had met Joshua Chad, Blade of Truth, publishing in one of the chat rooms. And I was talking to him, and he asked me to send over 1232. So I did. And then he said, oh, I also got another kind of like dark fiction book from this other author named Angela R. Watts. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And we kind of kept talking about some things. And then, 1232 wasn't the right book for him. Not a problem. This is my dad on the four-wheeler. Hold on one second. I'll be back. Sorry about that. Yeah, I did. Get out of here, Dad. I live in a zoo, and this is just the way it is. You'll probably hear some chickens. It doesn't matter if I tell people ahead of time or not, like, hey, I'm going to be... It's like, that's when they would rather get my attention.
Yes. Yeah, I feel. I did a podcast last night, and I had to take my brother downstairs for like 2 hours. But she actually
Nice.
He listened.
Oh, that's funny. Nice. Okay, where were we? Yeah, how I came across you. And basically, Joshua Chad was saying, it's like, well, it's kind of down between, your book and this other girl, Angela's book. And so I was like, okay, if this girl is my competition, who is this? And I wasn't planning on hating you or anything like that. I'm not like
you
that.
Should
but
have.
I was like gonna stalk you a little bit and be like, okay, what is this person? And I came across your work and I'm like, oh, well, obviously. But I really saw that genuineness from you and your creativity and how you were obviously following your own path. And I really respected that. And whenever I got to read Golgotha, I got to read, I'm making my way through the Infidel series. And now I'm going to be reading your second book, Devore. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool because it's very, I use the term real, and that means different things for everybody. But there's something, it's got to taste like dirt. I gotta taste the grit. I gotta taste the feelings and emotions and the scenarios that are realistic. Even within magic, I feel like there's a type of realistic magic that's different from, oh, good Lord Almighty. Hold on.
3 hours later.
Okay, I'm going to finish because obviously we should be talking about you, not me. But, but I really enjoy that about your work and your art. To me, it is genuine, it is authentic, it is real. Even though, you haven't personally experienced a lot of what your characters are going through, there's just that pouring of yourself into it and really visualizing it and seeing it. And I just really feel that when I come across your art. And that's something that I want to look for is other artists who also are like, hey, this is my conviction, my ideal scenario, or my faith in God that is convincing me, keeping me on this obedient path to follow through. Because in my opinion, that's what artists are really lacking these days, is a conviction, is some kind of fortitude, a stronghold that they're being steadfast about. It doesn't matter, okay, you don't want to do the popular genres. That's great. Don't do them, And everybody comes against that because truly their motivations are money in the end, and to me, art does not equal money. That's, I've never looked at it that way. What do you think about that?
I completely agree, and that was part of my struggle the past few months. Is because I don't think there's anything wrong with making a living, and I'm very blessed that I'm able to do that, doing what I love. But making money, like my idol, it doesn't work for me. I don't want to create art just to make money off it. I don't want to create art just because I think it'll do well. I want to create art because it's exactly what God's telling me to make at that moment. Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier, I think that's enough. It might not be popular among, artists and stuff, and not everyone will want to do that, but because it's risky. I mean, it's risky, bouncing around project to project, and being one of the few, who is like steadfast through trials, and not really bending to any kind of mob or anything. It's very risky, but I think it's worth it. I think God sees that. Mm-hmm. When you're doing exactly what he wants of you, I think he sees it, and I think he will bless it too. It might not look like what we expect, but it's blessings. So
yeah, exactly. That's how I feel about it too. Yeah, I just think that's such a pure way to go about your art is being able to have that call of obedience. And I feel like it's people who really get run around by the world and burned out are the ones who don't have that call of obedience. They're just making it because, somebody liked it, or it's making me money, or even, we can even as Christians fall into this thing like, like this story is what people need to hear, versus this story is what God told me people need to hear. You know what I mean? And I know that's kind of intense Christianese, but I truly mean it.
It's important.
It is important because we can become our own God and our own voice of reason and say, this is what we want people to hear. This is what we're going to preach about. This is what we're going to say. And some of your stuff, some of your books, especially the Infidel books, have come across some really intense controversy within different sects of the Christian fiction world. And you've dealt with it brilliantly. To me, it just seems like you're just above that. You're just like, whatever. But just for our listeners, tell me what about your work has been controversial to folks?
Not what I thought. I expected going into it a lot of people to be upset about kind of the focus on government or the lack of, I challenge a lot of things in this series. My characters question everything, and their ways of moving forward can be questionable at times. So I was kind of expecting those basic civil rights kind of topics to be what people got upset about. It wasn't. I had more Christians upset with the actual Christianity. So not all of the main characters in the Infidel books are Christians. Some of them are, and it definitely plays like a key role in those arcs. Like if they're Christian, it's going to tint how they react to the world around them. But I had many people email me, review the book, tell me up front that I was not a Christian. These books were not Christian. I was misleading people. The characters were fake Christians. It got rough at times. I remember even having an editor tell me that I should be like ashamed of myself for writing that book. So yeah, the controversy was targeted at things I honestly did not expect, because I thought that was kind of fitting for the genre. I mean, post-apocalyptic, a lot's going on, a lot's bad, and people naturally question things and make mistakes. So I wanted to have Christian characters who messed up, who question things, and people did not like that.
Oh man,
that was fun.
Yeah. And how did you balance that out? Was it kind of more of that thing that keeps you going? You're just
yeah. Especially with the Infidel books, because I started writing that in a community where I only received poor feedback. They were all Christians, we're all extremely strict, so the pure mindset. They basically told me that it was not a genre that a Christian needed to do at all. And I remember from the start just not listening to them and doing it anyway. And the people out there still continued to tell me that it was wrong and I was leading people astray. But I just consistently knew that this was what God was telling me to do, and that was enough. That was, that kind of outweighed the negativity throughout the series.
Yeah. Wow. I can understand that. I can, especially within my musical world. A lot of what my husband and I write in our music, people are always actually the persecution has gone so far as to affect some of my family members, which I won't get into any dirt about that. But you know, people, because we were playing in bars and we were playing music that's not, you know, I mean, I guess it would be called secular, which why there's like Christian music genres versus secular. I don't know, because our genre was rock and folk rock, and how that has to be separated into Christian and non-Christian. I don't understand that part. We were just writing and playing what we wanted, and we were playing in a lot of bars because we felt like that's kind of where we were needed and where we wanted to play music that had a happier message to it than just doom and gloom. And rock and roll is awesome and exciting, and so much fun to play. And the lyrical content can be anything. It doesn't have to just be uh, typical stuff. I mean, if you really listen to um, the great rock and rollers, I mean, it spans from Lord of the Rings to gospel blues to it's all every kind of influence that they had that made their rock songs great. So I get that persecution. That is weird. I guess we could call it persecution, but negative feedback. And that's as they say, negative feedback is good for keeping you going, and really pushing you to the next level. Either it shakes your foundations to where where you're standing with something and why you're actually doing it, or it can help you, pitch an idea out. But I've really enjoyed the series because, like I said, it's real and it's gritty, and I relate to so many of the characters more than when I pick up a very Christian specific book, because we don't live in a bubble. We do not live in a bubble. I mean, I would say that, like, uh, secular people live more in a bubble than we do. Sometimes they have very narrow depths of field on what they allow and don't allow in their lives, but Christians do too. And I mean, I'm like, we're living freedom in Christ, man. What is going on here? Gosh, that's crazy. That's crazy. But whatever. That's the way it goes. Just gotta. Yeah, exactly. So going forward on your writing journey, so you've learned how to balance a few things, manage your time a little bit better, get yourself some rest. You've got a few more projects in the works. What do you want to see in your field of writing? Like, what, on a personal level, on a professional level, where is Angela going? What would you like to see?
That's why I really go to that ACD song, ACDC, going off the rails with Crazy Train.
Yeah,
hopefully not there. Hopefully not off the rails, but it feels like that.
Nice.
But yeah, as I mentioned before, just kind of bouncing around, so to speak, with the genres. But I do have a plan. It's a light plan, nice. But long term, I do want to continue writing post-apocalyptic and fantasy, and I have some trilogies and series and stuff planned out for those genres, and I'm expecting to start both genres again this year. That's confusing, but it'll happen.
Yeah.
And also pursue the middle grade a little bit. So Winter of the Bees, right now I'm pitching it to agents and small presses and stuff, and it's getting a lot of interest, more interest than actually most books get. So that's cool. But if it doesn't get picked up, I'll probably self-publish the middle grade sometime this year. And if it does get picked up, then I don't know how long that'll take.
Yeah.
And I'm working on wrapping up the Remanent Trilogy. So book 3 should come out sometime this year too. And then I can pursue, another fantasy trilogy or something like that shortly after. So yeah, just a lot of
How
projects. And
how do you work that hard? How do you do that? I mean, you're a one girl show. How
yes,
on earth do you do that?
a little bit every day.
Wow. Yeah.
Right now I'm actually working on a fantasy standalone. So I'm taking a break from Remnant Book 3. It will be done, obviously
Yeah.
I've got to finish the series, but it's just very heavy. And I just needed a small step back to kind of like calm down and refocus. So I'm doing a fantasy standalone at the moment as well. And it's like halfway through, and I've been working on that since January 1st, I think. So yeah, just a lot of plans, but and also a calm because it is a lot, and I don't want to push myself. I want to be able to live in the moment and live my life too. But writing, for me, it is part of my life, so I don't see myself stopping anytime soon.
Mhm.
But I want my focus to stay on writing a good story. Last year I got to focus sometimes on, marketing or how much I was making, or, what people were saying about my books and stuff. And
Mhm.
I don't want to do that again. So, I
Yeah.
will continue publishing and writing and putting books out and stuff, but with a more focus on,
Mhm.
on why I'm doing things.
That's
Hopefully that
awesome.
makes sense.
No, yeah, I mean,
There's
it
always
makes
so much
sense.
to do.
I know. Yeah, and I mean, I too have worn all the hats, but I think you're like a master hat wearer because how you were able to get a best-selling series online and be able to master, I'm assuming Amazon ads and uh,
Not yet.
keywords and I mean keywords and all of that. Did you take any classes or uh,
Um,
just do
I
some?
actually I have not taken any classes, um, and I don't actually have experience with Amazon ads yet. That is another thing I will be trying to do this year. I was recommended to try Facebook ads, so I'm going to try, some ads this year. But my thought process behind the ads was that I wanted to have a few completed series before I really started putting money into anything. I mean, maybe that's not wise. I don't know, but it kind of frees me up to finish the series first. So the Infidel books is done, and I did actually do one promo or something, and it did
Mhm.
really well last month. So once the Revenant trilogy is done, I will probably put more focus into actually paying ads. I'm hopefully that works. I
Yeah.
don't know yet. I'm still learning.
Wow. So you you built, I mean, just explain just a little bit how you kind
Mhm.
of built up to that best selling. Was it keywords? I mean, what did you use to get your
Yes.
story out there?
Um, yeah. So keywords help because that's what people usually put into the search bar and stuff like that. But as far as the rankings and categories, like when you hit number one in an Amazon category, that's actually a category. So there's the keywords, but those don't really show up on the listing. So when you publish your book, Amazon only lets you choose like two categories, like fiction, fantasy,
Mhm.
fiction, Christian fantasy. But if you email them, they will allow more focused categories. You have to find the ones that work. So it takes days,
Yes.
if not weeks, to actually find the appropriate categories, because you don't want to just choose a random category and, oh, I hit number one bestseller. No, you do want to it needs to fit.
Yeah.
But that's very useful for getting your book out there and really harnessing Amazon and all that it offers with the rankings and stuff.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot of work. I know how that goes. It's competitive and it is
Mhm.
time consuming. You absolutely have
Very,
to
yeah.
spend a lot and you really got to know your story really
Yes.
well and the objective and get lots and lots of feedback about
Mhm.
where it fits. We can often get in an echo chamber as creatives and as artists, and not the echo chamber of, oh, I'm the greatest, just like, oh, yeah, this makes sense to me. I know what this is. And then you have people read it and they're calling it something completely opposite of what you would call it. And then your brain gets all muddled and you're like, well, what the heck? So where can we, I mean, obviously we've talked about Amazon and also your website. Just kind of list through where people can find you and where you prefer people to find you online.
Um, so my website is like my home base. Pretty much all of the info is there. And I'm also on Facebook. I have an author profile on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. And I will be like being more active on YouTube. That's pretty much the only thing I'm not active on right now. And I also have like the Amazon page and a Goodreads page for like the book focused stuff. And I'm pretty much, yeah, I'm active on pretty much all of it. I don't really accept friend requests or anything on Goodreads. I'm not on that as much, but people still find me there. But yeah, I'm pretty much active everywhere. And I usually see messages and stuff like that. But if you can't get a hold of me through Facebook or whatever, you can just email me. I think my email's on my website.
Nice. Yeah, and we'll have all that link below so that people can check it out and
Stalk
follow it.
me.
Yeah, and stalk you and find out this woman of mystery and find out why she's better than you. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding. Oh man, it has been really fun talking to you, Angela, and I really appreciate you taking the time. And I'm stoked to read what you got. Don't write too fast. I won't be able to keep up. Ah,
I've been
but
told. I've been told. Thank you so
no,
much for
yeah.
having me on.
Yeah, and so we've come to our last question, which is kind of a weird one, but I find it interesting. What's the one thing in art, or we can narrow it down to what's the one thing in the book world that we aren't talking about, but we really should be?
Hmm. Um, I feel like it's appropriate to kind of bring up this topic a little bit, and that is the importance of community. We've been kind of talking about, to bring your art to the next level, you need more feedback. You need, the negative feedback sometimes and the positive feedback and things like that. And I just know when I was young, I was terrified of community. And then you enter the wrong communities and stuff like that. And I know a lot of times art seems like a lonely process. And honestly, it is. It can be, like when you're just in your room doing it yourself. That's lonely. It can be lonely.
Mhm.
But it's worth putting the effort into finding your community. As an artist, you don't have to be friends with somebody who's doing exactly what you're doing. You don't have to be friends with an author who does exactly your genre or whatever. But just don't forget, why you're doing it, and that is community. And
Mhm.
most senses, you're trying to help somebody else. You're trying to show a bit of yourself to somebody else. So just focusing on community and remembering, why you're doing the art, why you're sharing it, it helps. It goes a long way when, it's tough to actually do the art. You just keep in mind why you're doing it.
That's very good. That's true. I mean, I find that as well. That is an important thing to be discussing in the artist community because, and also my passion being multimedia, to have people who are musicians or filmmakers or authors or painters, artists, of all kinds, communicating with one another and helping lift each other up is a really big
Exactly.
deal. And it all levels out in the end. So I just think that
Yeah.
it's, the world has divided us and categorized us as artists so much. We have a genre for every little thing
Hmm.
that, yes, it's easier to find, exactly what you want to consume. But then what that does is that builds a little box that you as the consumer or you as the artist must fit in, and all of a sudden you're not willing to try something new, to listen to something new, to listen to, and then it'll go as far as opinions and beliefs, and all of a sudden you're locked in to a box with a very narrow mind and you're missing out on the world, and thus you lose your appreciation for the varieties of
Exactly.
of art that are out there, and I agree with you there. So hopefully more people have that discussion. We'll talk about it more on this podcast for sure.
Awesome.
Nice. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining us, Angela.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been awesome.
Cool. Something that I learned in talking with Angela and discussing the many obstacles she's had in her way and things she's overcome is that no matter what label we put on ourselves or our art, we're all filled with imperfections and hypocrisies and difficulties. But it's those of us who constantly pursue truth, who are navigating through our art with the intention of doing good to our fellow man, that help us through each one of those things. The trials Angela has been through are unique, but we can also all learn from them. She's a gal that is really inspiring to me, and I hope that you will support her on her creative and artistic journey. She is definitely a courageous creative. So make sure you check out the Kickstarter below to help her self publish her latest book, A Solstice of Fire and Light. Thanks for listening, and stay courageous.